It was a clear night in the Nevada desert, where the stars shone brightly over the sand dunes. Dr. Anna Costa, a respected researcher of paranormal phenomena, was in her labyrinth of papers and maps, surrounded by documents about the enigmatic Area 51. Her passion for unraveling mysteries had led her to investigate cases of UFO sightings and inexplicable disappearances over the years. That night, a brown envelope lay on her desk, drawing her attention. It had no return address, just a hurried handwriting that sent a chill down her spine. As she opened it, her hands trembled while reading the contents. Shadows roam at night. Screams echo in the silent corridors. Something terrible is about to happen. The words were a warning, a cry of despair from someone who had worked at the base. Anna's heart raced. This could be the case that would establish her in the scientific community, but it could also be a path to disaster. With determination, she decided to gather her team. The next morning, Anna called a meeting in her laboratory, where the atmosphere was charged with expectation and skepticism. "Look," she began, holding the letter as if it were a sacred artifact. "I received this. We need to investigate." Lucas, the hacker, raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "And what if this is a trap?" he asked, crossing his arms. Marcos, the former soldier, looked at Anna, his experiences making him more cautious. "We can't go into a place like that without knowing what we're facing, Anna." But Anna's determination was unwavering. She believed that scientific curiosity needed to prevail over fear. With a firm look, she said, "If we don't do this, we'll never know the truth." After lengthy discussions, the team finally agreed to unite. In the following days, they meticulously prepared, studying maps, gathering technology equipment, and assembling supplies. Each of them felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, as if they were on the brink of an abyss. On the eve of the mission, they met at a remote point in the desert, away from curious eyes. Anna, sensing the tension in the air, decided to give a speech. "We're about to discover the truth," she began, her voice steady. "Regardless of what we find, we must remember that curiosity is what drives us forward." As night fell, the team approached Area 51. The base's lights glowed in the distance, a beacon of secrets and mysteries. Using the device that Lucas had created, they managed to temporarily deactivate the alarms and, with a mix of nervousness and adrenaline, entered through the security fence. But as they advanced through the base's corridors, a strange feeling began to settle in. Distant rumblings and inexplicable echoes made them glance nervously around. The atmosphere was thick with unease, and the idea that something was watching them was not just paranoia. Ahead, Anna led the way, determined and anxious. What was about to happen in those shadows was something they could not foresee. The true terror, hidden in the depths of Area 51, awaited them, ready to reveal itself. As they advanced through the shadowy corridors of Area 51, adrenaline pulsed in their veins. The air was charged with palpable tension, and each step echoed against the cold, metallic walls. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting sinister shadows that seemed to dance around them. Anna led the way, her heart racing and her mind filled with questions. "What really happens here?" she thought. Lucas followed closely behind, his eyes scanning the monitors that flashed past on his screen. He was trying to access the base's security systems, but the layers of protection were more complex than he had anticipated. "I'm almost there," he whispered, focused, as nimble fingers danced over the keyboard. Marcos and Isabella stayed vigilant, listening to the sounds around them. The ex-soldier was alert, his training making him aware of every noise, every movement. Isabella, on the other hand, observed the details of the environment: test tubes, scientific equipment, and control panels pulsating with life. As the team delved deeper, they began to notice the corridor narrowing and the walls feeling more oppressive. An inexplicable chill enveloped the environment, and a sense of discomfort settled in. "Did you hear that?" Isabella asked, glancing around with a worried look. "What?" Marcos frowned, trying to identify the source of the sound. A distant whisper seemed to resonate between the walls, as if something were communicating in a forgotten language. "Let me check," Anna said, determined not to let fear take over. While Lucas continued working on his computer, one of the systems finally opened. He smiled, but the joy was short-lived. A shrill alarm echoed down the corridor, causing everyone to turn toward the sound's origin. "What did you do?" Marcos asked, his voice laden with tension. I didn't do anything, Lucas replied nervously. I just managed to access some information. Before they could regroup, a flash of light illuminated the area, and a door opened automatically in front of them. It was a dark room, and a shadow loomed at the entrance. Let's go, Anna said, pulling the others inside. But before they could move, something happened. Marcos, who was closest to the exit, began to scream. He turned, eyes wide, and then vanished from sight, pulled by an invisible force. Marcos! Isabella shouted, her heart racing. The team rushed towards the sound, but there was no sign of Marcos. Only the echo of his voice and the shadow that seemed to dissipate like smoke. The group was paralyzed for a moment, the reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. We need to get out of here, Isabella said, her voice trembling. We can't, Anna protested, determination still burning in her eyes. We need to find out what happened. He could be in danger. Lucas, still dazed, looked at Anna. And if we're next? But Dr. Costa was not willing to back down. She knew that the truth was more important than their lives. Determined not to leave Marcos behind, the team began to investigate the dark room, illuminating it with flashlights. The environment was filled with strange equipment and test tubes containing substances that glowed in unsettling colors. What is this? Isabella asked, pointing to a vial that pulsed as if it had a life of its own. Anna approached, examining the labels. Genetic manipulation experiments, she murmured, her mind racing with possibilities. What are they doing here? Meanwhile, Lucas was trying to access the room's data, searching for information that could help in the hunt for Marcos. But the tension was rising, and the feeling of being watched did not dissipate. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. The team turned, and a strange presence seemed to fill them with deep fear. We have to go now, Isabella said, her voice almost a whisper. But before they could move, a new sound echoed, an agonizing scream that seemed to come from afar. It was Marcos. The team exchanged glances, and Anna, with a heavy heart, knew that the search for the truth was now becoming a fight for survival. The echo of Marcos's scream still reverberated through the corridors of Area 51, serving as a grim reminder of the danger surrounding them. The team, now united by a sense of urgency and dread, decided they could wait no longer. They needed to uncover what was happening and, if possible, rescue Marcos. Anna led the way, with Lucas and Isabella right behind her, their pale faces illuminated by the flashlights. The atmosphere was heavy, and the feeling of being watched intensified with every step. The whispers seemed to grow louder, as if the walls had a life of their own and were trying to communicate something. We need to find a central computer or something that gives us access to the records, Lucas suggested, his mind already buzzing with theories. There we can find out what's going on. They headed towards a wider corridor where the lights were brighter. As they approached, a metal door stood out in front of them, with a control panel nearby. Anna moved closer and began working quickly, trying to decipher the settings. Meanwhile, Isabella started examining the surroundings. What she found left her in shock. On a shelf, there were vials containing strange substances, each marking a different experiment. The labels read things like genetic manipulation and mind control. Anna, you need to see this, she called, her voice trembling. These are experiments with extraterrestrial beings. Anna stopped and turned, her gaze fixed on the vials. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. This explains the disappearances, she said, horror beginning to set in. They are conducting tests on beings they've captured. Lucas, still trying to access the computer, interrupted. Wait, here's something. He looked at the screen as information began to appear. They have records of experiments. Some people were taken for testing, and some never returned. Just as they began to process the information, the door to the room swung open abruptly, and a group of soldiers wearing combat uniforms and gas masks entered, armed and ready to act. What are you doing here? One of the soldiers shouted, his voice muffled by the mask. Anna, Lucas, and Isabella exchanged panicked glances. There was no time to think. We need to get out! Anna yelled, pulling Lucas and Isabella back as they tried to find an exit. The soldiers advanced, and the team found themselves surrounded. One of the soldiers, a tall man with a scar on his face, looked directly at Anna. You shouldn't be here, he growled. This place isn't safe. But before they could be captured, a loud noise came from the corridor. The lights began to flicker, and a deafening scream echoed, causing everyone to turn towards the door. A gigantic shadow loomed, and in an instant, a grotesque being burst forth from the darkness. It was an alien creature, with scaly skin and bright eyes reflecting a terrifying intelligence. The soldiers hesitated, and the team saw their opportunity to escape. "Follow me," Anna shouted, pulling Lucas and Isabella towards the opposite corridor. They ran, their footsteps echoing frantically against the cold walls. The creature, now free, began to chase the soldiers, who were trying to regroup to repel the threat. Anna and her team took advantage of the confusion to distance themselves. "We need to find Marcos," Isabella said, her voice filled with despair. "We can go back to the control room," Lucas suggested, still fixated on the monitors that now showed images of the creature devouring the soldiers. As they raced through the corridors, the team began to realize that Area 51 was filled with dark secrets, far beyond what they had ever imagined. The truth about the experiments was unfolding before them, but what else awaited them in the shadows? Upon reaching the control room, Anna quickly began accessing the files. The data Lucas had found earlier was becoming clearer. What they were dealing with were not just alien experiments, but also a clandestine mind control project involving human beings. "They were trying to control people's minds," Anna said, horrified. "And Marcos, he might have been one of the tests." Isabella felt a chill in her stomach. "What can we do? How are we going to save him?" Anna looked at the screen, her gaze determined. "We need to find out where he is. If we act fast, we can still rescue him." The control room was enveloped in an atmosphere of despair and urgency. Dr. Anna Costa, Lucas, and Isabella were frantically studying the monitors, trying to find Marcos's whereabouts. The data was confusing, filled with codes and graphs, but one thing was clear: they needed to act quickly. Anna typed rapidly, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The monitors flickered, and images of various sections of the base began to appear. One screen showed a maze of corridors, while another displayed a series of cells where human figures were visibly in a catatonic state. "Look," Anna said, pointing to the screen. "Those are the prisoners, and it looks like Marcos is in one of the cells." Lucas approached, analyzing the data. "We need a plan. If we go in there without knowing what we're facing, we'll easily be captured." Isabella, eyes fixed on the screen, felt a chill run down her spine. What if the experiments they've done on the prisoners, and on Marcos, have side effects? He might not be the same anymore. Isabella's words echoed in Anna's mind. What could they find? The idea that Marcos might be under some form of mind control, or, worse, have become one of the creatures they saw earlier, terrified her. "We need to go now," Anna said, her voice filled with determination. "We can't leave him behind." Before they could move, a sudden tremor shook the ground. The lights began to flicker, and a deafening alarm blared, echoing through the complex. "They know we're here!" Lucas shouted, adrenaline surging. Surrounded by a sense of impending calamity, the team prepared to flee. As they headed for the exit, a group of soldiers appeared, blocking their path. "Stop!" shouted one of the soldiers, weapon raised. Anna, without hesitation, stepped forward, determination overshadowing her fear. "We need to save a friend. He's in danger." The soldier hesitated, and at that moment, a shadow rushed past them. The grotesque creature they had seen before burst from the corridor, its bright eyes and sharp claws, and the soldiers began to fire. The sound of gunfire echoed, and the creature, in a fit of rage, lunged towards the soldiers, causing chaos and despair. Anna and her team seized the confusion to slip between the bodies and escape. "Quick!" Anna shouted, pulling the others toward a side corridor. As they ran, the reality of what they were facing began to settle in. What had started as a simple rescue had turned into a struggle for survival, and the line between friend and foe was becoming increasingly blurred. They dashed through dark corridors, the lights flickering and whispers growing in intensity. Every corner they turned brought new challenges and new threats. A sense of disorientation began to dominate Anna's mind. "We're lost," Isabella said, breathless. "We can't stop now," Anna replied, determined. "Marcos is close." Finally, they reached a heavy door marked Testing Area. Anna hesitated, fear growing inside her. What could be waiting on the other side? "I'll open it," Anna said, taking a deep breath. She turned the handle and pushed the door. What she found left her speechless. Inside the room, Marcos was strapped to an operating table, electrodes connected to his head. His eyes were closed and he appeared to be in a trance. Around him, scientific equipment and flickering monitors displayed graphs and data that Anna couldn't comprehend. "Marcos!" Isabella shouted, rushing toward him. But as she approached, a figure appeared in the shadows. It was one of the base scientists, a mad expression on his face. "No, the experiment cannot be interrupted," he shouted, raising a weapon. Tension reached its peak. Anna felt a wave of protectiveness over Marcos and positioned herself in front of him. "You can't do this," Anna shouted, her voice firm. The scientist hesitated, but the madness in his eyes did not recede. "He is the key. We need to continue." With a quick movement, Lucas, who had stayed behind, jumped and disarmed the scientist, who fell to the ground. "Now!" he shouted as Anna began to work on freeing Marcos. Finally, as the ties came undone, Marcos opened his eyes, confused and disoriented. What happened?" he murmured, his voice trembling. Anna looked at him, a mix of relief and fear in her eyes. "We're here. You're safe now." But before they could celebrate, the alarm sounded again, and the creature that had attacked the soldiers appeared in the doorway, eyes glowing with predatory fury. The testing room was in a state of chaos. The alien creature, now free and enraged, advanced towards the team with its glowing eyes and claws poised to attack. Anna, Lucas, Isabella, and Marcos were at a crucial moment, and their survival depended on their actions. "We have to get out!" Anna shouted, pulling Marcos away from the table. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, and the instinct to survive overpowered her fear. Lucas positioned himself between the creature and the group, trying to find a way to distract it. He scanned the area and spotted a gas cylinder on a nearby shelf. "Isabella, help me," he said, running towards the cylinder. "We need to use it as a smoke bomb." Isabella, realizing the plan, quickly joined him. As Lucas began to unscrew the cylinder, Anna and Marcos prepared to run. The cylinder was released, and a cloud of gas began to spread through the room. The creature hesitated, confused by the new conditions. "Now!" Anna shouted, pulling Marcos and Isabella towards the door. They ran into the corridor, the smoke covering their backs, while the creature, still panting, tried to adapt. The sound of claws scraping the floor echoed, and the team knew they couldn't afford to waste time. They raced through one of the side corridors, the echoes of their footsteps blending with the blaring alarm that still sounded throughout the base. The feeling of being watched didn't leave them, and every corner they turned could be a trap. "Where do we go?" Marcos asked, his voice still trembling. "We need to find an exit," Anna replied, trying to stay calm. "What else do we know about the structure?" Lucas, panting, looked around. "There's an emergency exit on the west side of the complex, but I don't know if we can make it there." As they pressed on, a new group of soldiers appeared, armed and ready for combat. The same man Anna had confronted earlier was at the front, determination in his eyes. "Stop!" he shouted, but Anna didn't hesitate. "We need to get out. You don't understand," she pleaded, feeling the pressure rise. The soldier hesitated, but the creature was right behind them, and panic took hold of the group. The situation was escalating quickly, and the team realized that if they didn't act, everyone would be lost. In the midst of the chaos, something unexpected happened. Marcos, still disoriented, began to murmur words that made no sense. Anna turned to him, realizing that something was changing. "Marcos, what's happening?" she asked, trying to reach him. He looked at her, confusion in his eyes, but then understanding began to dawn. They're in control, but I can fight," he said, his voice growing stronger. The group of soldiers, wavering between fear and obedience, seemed to hesitate. The connection Marcos had with the experiments began to manifest, and he stood up, a new light in his eyes. "I can help you!" Marcos shouted, and his voice echoed through the corridors, filled with power and determination. "If I can access what they did to me, I can control them." Anna felt a mix of hope and fear. "Marcos, are you sure? It's risky." "It's our only chance," he replied, his voice firm. With the creature approaching and the soldiers indecisive, Marcos began to concentrate. Anna and the rest of the team positioned themselves between him and the creature, ready to protect him at all costs. Marcos, in a trance-like state, closed his eyes. He began to murmur words, and a wave of energy seemed to emanate from him. The soldiers, who were once ready to attack, now appeared to hesitate, as if fighting against something that had kept them captive. The creature, sensing the change in the environment, stopped. Marcos's eyes glowed, and he turned to the creature. "I am not your prisoner," he shouted, and a wave of energy pulsed through the room. The creature hesitated and then began to writhe, as if struggling against an invisible control. The soldiers, now free from manipulation, looked at Marcos in confusion. "What are you doing?" the scarred soldier asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Freeing you," Marcos replied, his strength growing. With one last shout, he channeled all his energy. The creature, now in turmoil, let out a deafening scream that echoed through the corridors as Marcos's influence spread. The room exploded in light, and Anna, Lucas, and Isabella shielded themselves from the debris. When the light finally dissipated, the creature lay on the ground, motionless. The room was enveloped in a tense silence, the soft emergency light illuminating the exhausted faces of the team. The creature, now motionless, seemed to have lost the battle, but victory was still not guaranteed. The sound of the alarm continued to echo, and time was running out. "We need to go now," said Anna, looking at Marcos, who was still recovering from the effort. "We don't know how much time we have before they send reinforcements." Lucas, already moving, began searching for an exit. "The emergency exit should be down this corridor," he said, gesturing. "Let's go." Isabella, still alert, helped Marcos to his feet. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "I'm just a bit tired," he replied, forcing a smile. "But I need you guys." The team ran down the corridor, determined to find the exit. The atmosphere was charged with adrenaline and anticipation, and each step seemed to echo at an accelerated rhythm. Anna led the way, with Lucas and Isabella by her side, while Marcos struggled to keep up, still battling fatigue. "Here!" shouted Lucas, pointing to a door with a flashing green light. "This must be the exit." Anna pushed the door, which creaked open. What they found on the other side was a spiral staircase leading down to a lower level. They descended quickly, the sound of their footsteps resonating on the cold metal. At the bottom of the stairs there was another door, marked Emergency Exit. Anna approached and tried to open it, but it was locked. "It can't be," she exclaimed, banging on the door. "We're so close." Lucas, without hesitation, began working on the control panel next to the door. "I have to hack the system," he said, focused. As Lucas worked, the sound of footsteps approached. The group looked back, and the tension mounted. Soldiers were coming, and time was running out. "Hurry, Lucas," said Isabella as anxiety grew. "I'm almost there," he replied, typing frantically. "Just a few more seconds." Anna looked at Marcos, who seemed weaker by the moment. "Can you do it?" she asked, worried. "Yes," he answered, breathless. "Let's get out of here." With one last hit on the keyboard, Lucas finally managed to unlock the door. "Got it," he shouted, pushing the door open forcefully. "Let's go." They rushed through the door, which opened into a lit tunnel. The sunlight shone in the distance, and the feeling of freedom enveloped them. But freedom was only a few meters away, and the group knew there were still dangers lurking. "We're almost there," exclaimed Anna, feeling the adrenaline rise. But before they could reach the light, a series of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. The soldiers were closing in, and the creature, even fallen, seemed to be awakening in some way. "Let's go!" shouted Anna, urging everyone to run faster. They sprinted down the tunnel, the footsteps resonating behind them. The sunlight grew more intense, but the increasing sound of the soldiers pushed them forward. "Don't look back," commanded Anna, focusing only on the exit. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel, which opened into the desert. The sun hit them like a warm embrace, but the feeling of safety still felt distant. As they emerged, the group turned to see what was following them. The soldiers were close, ready to fire, but the creature, now fully awake, had risen. "What do we do now?" asked Isabella, desperate. Marcos, still recovering his strength, looked at the creature and then at Anna. "I can try to control it again," he said, his voice firm and determined. "But I need time." "We don't have time," replied Lucas, glancing at the soldiers' weapons. "Then we fight," said Anna, resolute. The soldiers were now just a few meters away, their weapons raised. The creature, in an unexpected move, charged towards the soldiers, who opened fire. But Marcos, concentrating all his energy, tried to connect with the creature. "I am not your enemy," shouted Marcos, a light shining around him. "You are free." The creature hesitated, its eyes shining with confusion. The soldiers, surprised, hesitated for a moment, and that was all the team needed. Marcos, in a final effort, channeled his energy. The creature, with a deafening roar, turned against the soldiers. Its sharp claws sliced through the air, and the shots began to fire, but the creature was now fighting for its freedom. Anna, Lucas, and Isabella stepped back, watching the battle between the creature and the soldiers. It was a desperate fight, but the creature seemed to gain the upper hand. "Let's take this chance and get out of here," said Anna, pulling the others. They ran away from the chaos, crossing the desert. The sounds of battle echoed behind them, but the feeling of freedom began to take hold. Finally, they found an abandoned vehicle, an old rusted pickup truck. "Quick!" shouted Lucas as everyone jumped into the vehicle. Anna turned on the engine, which rumbled and hesitated, but finally roared to life. They sped off, leaving Area 51 behind as the battle unfolded in the horizon.